John, in 1976, Jim Callaghan became the new Prime Minister, and he asked the people to explore the secret garden of the curriculum. He, in effect, was asking the population what they would like to see for education. Why did he do that at this point in time, and why hadn't we done that before?
It's very interesting, actually, and in these 3 interviews you're giving of me of the history of the school boards, we're going to cover about 110 years, but right at the very heart of this explanation, I think, is Jim Callaghan. Jim Callaghan, born in 1912, that was 10 years after the 1902 Education Act, became a Member of Parliament in 1945, became Prime Minister in 1976, lost the general election to Margaret Thatcher in 79, and died in the early 1990s. So he's a person that many people listening to this will remember, and he spreads the whole of this period. And his story is very interesting because he was born in Portsmouth. His father was in the Navy. His father died 6 years later. His mother was very poor. They moved to Plymouth. They moved around the country in lodgings. He was a bright youngster. But there were no grammar schools for him to go to because of the 1902 Education Act. Eventually, however, he did get into a secondary school which prepared youngsters to go as apprentices into the dockyard. He wasn't a very serious student because he was much more interested in books and ideas. Now, this is typical of the early 20th century, bright youngsters who weren't served very well by the school system. Eventually, at the age of 16, he did please his mother enormously by getting a job in the Inland Revenue, and he was sent to a tax office. Well, he was, as I said, a bright youngster. He was also very well motivated. His mother was a keen Baptist. He was brought up as a keen Baptist. He attended lots of functions like that. And typical of a number of other people in that tradition, in the early 30s, he was an ardent member of the Labour Party. And he was into how can we build an even better world. By the time of 1944-45, he was already registered as the prospective Labour candidate for Cardiff. 1945, war over. Churchill suddenly announced that he was resigning, there would be an election, and Callaghan received a message, and he was on a ship somewhere in the Far East, get back to England quickly, you're going to have to start taking part in an election campaign, which he did. It took him a week to get back. And he became part of the Labour Party that came to power in 1945. And you need to understand this. The Labour Party came in with some 330 members, 250 of whom had never sat in Parliament before. And they had the job of putting together the post-war settlement. Callaghan, along with Clement Attlee and a load of other people, worked their butts off to try and create a brave new world. And they did it, in a sense, through the 1940s, the 1950s, into the 1960s. They created enormous opportunities for people. But then, as the 60s wore on, Callaghan and others looked around and saw, God, these youngsters coming in, they're soft. They didn't have to work to achieve what they've done. He said they just got there on the shoulders of ourselves. And by the time he became Prime Minister, he was very jaundiced. He said, we've produced this wonderful education system, but actually people can't even do things for themselves. They learn theoretical stuff in school, but they don't know how to do anything. They're not like us. And when he addressed a number of head teachers and administrators on this, he was absolutely fed up. They talked in terms of learned plans and this, that and the other, and he said, I don't think you know what you're talking about. And he became Prime Minister in 1976. One of the first things he turned to was education. And he decided to face the issue straight on. What is this secret garden of the curriculum? And he called one of his new members of the Cabinet, Shirley Williams, to become Education Secretary. Now, he only had 3 years before he lost to Margaret Thatcher in 79, so he didn't get very far with it. But what he did do, I rather regret, because in his concern to change things, he started to go just a little bit too far. He said, what we need is a national curriculum. We want to be able to tell everybody what to do. He didn't establish it. that was left for another 10 years. By the time Kenneth Baker came along and produced national curriculum, it was so repressive and so constricting that in fact we have the problems that we have at the moment. But I think we would all do well just to realise there was one person whose story spreads all that business the last 110 years, and it really accounts for the problems of 2012.